I want to welcome everyone. I'm Gloria Kondrup, the Executive Director of the Hoffmitz Milken Center for Typography. Sean Adams, the Chair of ArtCenter's Graduate and Undergraduate Graphic Design Department, will be taking over in a minute. I will disappear, Bonnie, Sean will not, and I will reappear when it's time for the Q&A. But until then, I'm going to say, Sean, take it away.
Thank you, Gloria. I like your new backdrop too.
Oh, thank you. And by the way, it's real, it's not virtual. Anyway, thank you so much. I will see you in a few.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie. Bye.
So welcome everybody, and Bonnie, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm sorry we pulled you away from your pool time. And,
it's okay. I can go back after.
That's afterwards, right? Yeah. So, and for everyone joining us, Bonnie is one of the most remarkable designers on the planet. She and I started our careers pretty much within a couple of months of each other. Yes. And
I'm I was June 93 for my company.
Yeah, and I was like November 93. And, you know, but at the but I was, she's one of those people, and she doesn't know this, but I was a huge fan of her work. And so intimidated to meet her. Like, I was just like, oh my God, like, and I think we met at a conference in San Francisco, and I was just like, one of the few times I've been intimidated in my life. And then, then you get to know Bonnie and you're like, what was wrong with me? Just a fun
exactly.
But no, we've knocked around a long time together. And
yes, we have
you with us today.
Thank you.
From your lovely home estate.
Exactly.
So I'll let you start chattering away to them.
Okay.
And I'm here just so I can butt in once in a while.
Yes, please do. I mean, it's very weird to do a whole lecture without seeing or hearing anybody. When I teach classes, I see the student. It's just, this is new for me and I'm a little scared.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. Okay. So this talk is about design, family, and politics, because those are the three things that are most important to me in my life. And each one always influences the other. And right now, all three are right here in this small space. But I'm going to start by showing you how the relationship between those three things has changed through my career. Okay, so this is my post-COVID-19 chart. Politics and family have really moved in on my design portion, because before COVID, let's just say March, that was a few years ago, March, it was really balanced. I had reached a balance in my life after more than 25 years with my studio. Yeah, it was pretty good back in March. In my 40s, I had 2 kids and I still had a business to run, and there was Obama and we had to make sure he got 2 terms. So it broke down like this. Politics took a portion, friends and family took a portion, but design was still the predominant thing going on. And in my 30s, we started our company, number 17, and I still worked, 80% of the time, but also got married and had a kid and stuff like that. But in my 20s, it was like this. I worked 24/7, and you should too. It's the perfect time to spend all your time working. And Bill Clinton was president, and we didn't take to the streets about anything. So there was no politics to deal with yet, no family to deal with yet. So I worked all the time. Okay, but let's begin with the design part. I'm going to show you work from all different areas that we work in, which is really my favorite part of what we do, because we never get bored. We work with all different kinds of companies in all different fields. And each of those projects becomes an incredible learning experience. It's almost like graduate school in that subject. So the whole thing has been a huge education for me. But when I was in college and saw presentations like this, I always wondered how people start their careers. So I'm going to start there. After I graduated from Carnegie Mellon, I got a job at a really small studio. And it wasn't like a dream design job or anything, but it was a job and I was paid to work in design. But the best thing was that I met my future partner there. She was a designer there too. And we were traveling in the Caribbean and we found this little print shop. And this is a long time before we started Number 17, probably like 8 years before. But they made these perforated booklets of business cards and we each made them with our home phone numbers. And these were our first business cards, which we didn't design at all. And I still really love them. So we had them made for ourselves. And then it took me, you know, that first job, I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting, but what else is there out there? So it took me a while to figure it out. And I realized that my dream job at that moment was to work in television. So I called MTV. You know, when MTV came on the scene when I was in college, it was the first time design was on television. So it totally rocked my world. So I called them up and I told them I knew nothing about television, but I really wanted to work there. And they hired me with my little print portfolio. And I learned how to use the paint box and I worked from, you know, midnight to 8 in the morning because that was the shift that was available. And I eventually moved to VH1 where I became the art director. And yes, that was the hideous logo for VH1 that I had to deal with. When we started Number 17, we worked out of my living room and until we could afford a real office. And this is a really cherished memento. We've never received anything like this from a prospective employee. We asked this guy if we could look at his portfolio, if he could come over. And he sent this in response. So there was a bigger envelope inside, and this was inside the bigger envelope with this tissue paper and a ribbon. And then there was this card, which basically very formally accepted the invitation to review his portfolio. He was hired. Before he walked in the door, he was hired. We just loved it so much. He went above and beyond and did something unique and creative. He was our first employee. We worked for a lot of different companies in the beginning, but I'm going to share a few Saturday Night Live related work because it's fun. So we started working with SNL very shortly after we started our business, and we started by working on parody commercials. So this is one called Crystal Gravy, and it was around the time that Crystal Pepsi came out. So it was a parody of all these Crystal products. And keep in mind, the graphic design is the straight guy. The graphic design itself isn't funny. We were just, yeah, we were the straight guy. Okay, a few years after we worked on a bunch of parody commercials, we were asked to design a new logo. And by that time, it seemed to us Saturday Night Live was one word, so we made it official. And we got to create our first SNL Open. And the opens, in case you haven't noticed, have a formula of late night partying with the cast and drinking and dancing in New York. So this is the first open we worked on.
It's Saturday Night Live with Tim Brewer.
Sorry about the quality of those. They were like transferred from a Betamax to a 3/4 inch. You know, it's terrible.
Down to like a VHS, and yeah.
Exactly. And then back up again to 1-inch tape.
Right.
So a year or two after that, Jim Signorelli, who ran the SNL Films unit, asked us if we could do anything we wanted for the Open and not follow a formula, what would we do? So we made these boards with cutout windows using this little gel sample book. And the idea was to show the nightlife and the motion in the city abstractly. And they let us do it. Most opens last a few years, but this one only lasted 1 year.
It's Saturday Night Live with Tim Brewer, Will Burrows.
A few years later, we designed a new logo. This one was designed to mimic the way Don Pardo said the name of the show in the opening sequence, getting louder with each word. But we did love this logo and we're sad to see it go. So luckily 30 Rock was being developed at the same time. So we kept it going, and it actually made this great subliminal connection to Saturday Night Live. And we designed lots of stuff for the Girly Show, which was, if anybody's a 30 Rock fan, it was the show in the show before it became TGS. And you can still see a lot of the stuff we designed for the Girly Show in the background on the set. But back to this logo. This is one of the opens we designed with this logo.
It's Saturday Night Live. Little Forte.
Okay. Some years later, it was time for the 40th anniversary of SNL, and they asked us to design a logo for it. So we went back and looked at the first logos, which I didn't even realize, and I found it fascinating because it's great to see how different designers handled the same problem through different eras. So this was the very first SNL logo in 1975, and this was the second one, which was all computer gamey. And this one was done in 1979. It was the one that I remembered. I think it's the one that most people remembered. And so we used it as the basis for our 40th anniversary logo, which looked like this. And if you're interested, you can own a Saturday Night Live faux mink throw blanket with this logo on it for 25% off. Jimmy Fallon was tapped to take over late night, and we designed the new logo for it. And they definitely wanted an SNL feel, which I think it has. And then when Seth Meyers took that over, we designed this identity. We wanted it to have the same SNL feeling, but Seth covers more news-related current event stuff. He was the host of Weekend Update. So we put a little Walter Cronkite into this identity. But the best thing happened a few years later, which was Mindy Kaling posted this photo with these two writers who just happened to be wearing both of our identities that one day. That made me very happy.
You didn't set that up.
No, Mindy Kaling took the picture and posted it on Instagram.
That's great.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
We do a lot of work with a company called Criterion Collection. They publish amazing DVDs of important classic and contemporary films from all over the world. And sometimes they do film restorations and play them in cinemas. So when that happens, we get to make a trailer. This is a trailer for Hard Day's Night, which they restored, and then it was playing in theaters all over the country. So, you know, the best thing about doing trailers is I get to be an expert in whatever film I'm working on. I watch it over and over. I figure out my favorite parts. I figure out the story I want to tell. And I never give the story away. I never give away, you know, exactly what you're going to see like other trailers do now. But really, when this is over, if you want to see the movie, if you think to yourself, oh my God, I don't know if I've ever seen Hard Day's Night, then we will have done our job.
That's gorgeous. The quality of that video is amazing.
Yeah, it was restored.
Wow. And I love the typography. I love that it's just so rigidly exactly the same all the time.
Well, get ready. So the next one is for a Harold Lloyd movie called The Freshman. And this was a great challenge because people don't usually think, oh, I'd love to see a silent movie, but these silent movies are phenomenal. So we wanted to make it feel more compelling to watch, see how much fun this movie is. So here it is.
That's beautiful.
It's a great film. Next, another project I did for Criterion were these 90-second long pieces called 3 Reasons. They release about 5 movies a month, and we would choose 2 of them to make these little, these 90-second films that sort of explain why you should see this film. We made over 100 of these over years. But I think of making them as really similar to a book. There's the cover, there's 3 chapters, and then there's the back cover or the end pages. So this, I'm trying to think what this first one is. I think it's Harold and Maude. Yeah, it's Harold and Maude, which is an amazing movie. When I was a kid, there was this one moment when Harold turns to the camera and breaks the 4th wall, and it just rocked my world. I couldn't believe it, and I got to include this as the button in the end of this. So you'll see.
And you're managing all the footage, right? Like you're editing all the footage together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Just let you feel it. Don't fear, or nobody will know. I wish I knew. What makes me, what makes you, you. See. Cause there's a million things to be, you know there are, you know that there are. You know, everyone has the right to make an ass out of themselves. You can't let the world judge you too much.
Isn't that an amazing moment?
That's a great ending on that one.
I loved it. You know, for making these though, it's like it's dialogue and moving pictures instead of text and photographs or text and illustration, but it really is a design project. This next one is called Band of Outsiders. It's a movie I'd never seen before, and now it's one of my favorites.
Cette fois, c'est le moment d'ouvrir une deuxième parenthèse et de décrire les sentiments des personnages.
Minute de silence, ça dure une éternité. Ok.
And in the real movie, it's quiet, it's silent for a minute.
Wow. I
It's,
mean, how fun though to be able to like, you know, scan through all those films and like take them apart and retell them.
we wanted to tell, like, give you the emotion of the story. And if you like that kind of thing, you'll love this movie, but you really don't know anything about it.
Right. But you're not telling us the whole plot. It's not like
Exactly.
a trailer where it's like, well, that was the movie.
Exactly. Now I don't need to see it. That's how I feel about trailers.
Yeah.
So Will and Grace is another longtime client. We did the original open when it came out in 1998, and then it ran until 2006. And then a few years ago, it came back again. And we got to open update our old open with a shiny new open based on the old open. So this is what we did. But I'm only showing you that because of something that happened on Jimmy Fallon. It was such a big deal that the show was coming back that the cast went on Jimmy Fallon the day before the new show started. And this is what they did. They acted out the open.
That's great.
That was the best.
I love that.
Book covers. I love designing book covers. They're, mini posters like the movie where you take 2 hours of a movie and reduce it to 90 seconds. You have to try and communicate the themes and emotions of the book in this relatively small space. And the cover will be looked at, hundreds of times by someone reading it. I think it's a huge responsibility. But what's crazy now, more important than this, is this. It has to look good at this tiny scale. It's kind of like when record albums went to CDs. They went to smaller than half their size, and you have to readjust the way you think of book covers, and the same thing happened here. So these are just a few book covers we've done over the years. This is really old. This is really old. A Ned Bazzini book. This one is new, and it's we had a lot of discussions because they wanted to tone down the anger in this cover. Seriously, a book about women's anger. That's all I have to say.
That's great. I'm amazed you got that through.
I am too, actually.
That is amazing.
We also designed complete books like this one. This is a 900-page book that was a total blast to make. It's all based on Terry Gilliam's brilliant design work. It almost felt like we were working for Terry Gilliam doing this, which is amazing. So it's every script from every show, illustrated and annotated. I love designing cases, and we did something here with the case and the end pages, tying them together with colors. I mean, the case and the end pages are something editors and publishers usually don't think about. So when you come in and say, oh, you know what I want to do here? They're like, great, it's not just a solid color, go for it. This is the title page, chapter divider page. this is just a typical spread, and books like this are crazy complicated because every time we wanted to add an image or there was a new annotation, everything shifted. Sean, you know about this.
Yeah, yeah.
Takes a
It's
really...
like, oh, one little change, you're like, that's going to affect 900 pages.
Exactly. Then we just pulled some of our favorite quotes and made full spreads over them. Just to give you a break, you know. This is another giant book from a couple of years ago. It's 2 volumes of cartoons arranged by trope from A to Z, and they both came in this big box, and the categories on the spine are an example from A to Z of each of the categories. And we made it look like an actual encyclopedia with thumb cuts and everything. But going through the New Yorker cartoons, it was just crazy because there was a cartoon for every occasion. This is just before the title page, and this is the cartoon. It was so perfect, and it was not made for this purpose. This was the D divider page, so it showed all the D categories. For some reason, the Desert Island cartoons I just loved because they're so simple. It's just like the mound of the island, a palm tree, and 2 guys. And then you get to see like 12 different, you know, captions for this exact same cartoon. This is depression. They're very funny. A Desert Island essay. We were hired to redesign Newsweek, and I ended up staying on and out as creative director for 75 issues. It was an incredible opportunity to work with journalists and work really quickly because the articles and cover changed constantly. So we would get the mostly final content on a Wednesday and ship the magazine on a Friday. So you learn a whole different way of working. But we redesigned the format, the grid, the sections, the type, the use of photography and illustrations, everything. This is just another cover. This was the last cover we did, and I decided to violate the red bar at the top with a picture of Obama because there was no picture on the cover. This was the first full issue. And because Newsweek was international, we got to see how our designs were translated overseas, which was kind of cool. This is the cover and the table of contents, and we renamed the table of contents just by removing the S, since the contents was essentially the new week. And we always had kind of a call and response between the cover and the table of contents. To make this cover, we actually foil stamped a book and then opened the book and photographed it for the inside. This one is like a 2-frame film. I mean, it was so amazing. The pictures were, of course, taken not at the same time. And this one was a crazy story because I was working on this cover on a Friday afternoon before the issue closed. And while I was working on it, Vanity Fair posted these parodies of the cover I was still designing. So I had to stop designing it so the cover would match the parodies. These, we wanted to make the magazine more user-friendly. This was 10 years ago, mind you, but so we included a table of contents on each of the section dividers. And to make sure there was a lot of full bleed photography, we always used this page for a full bleed photograph. Sometimes it related to something in that section, sometimes it didn't. And I wanted to do something special for the back page because of my love for Mad Magazine and how special the Mad fold-in always was. So I came up with this thing called the backstory, where I would ask a question and work with journalists to sort of figure out the answer and then make a page of this kind of information. So like in 1900, an average baseball player salary was $58,000, the equivalent of $58,000, today 3 million. But the president's salary went from the equivalent of 1.3 million to 400,000. So it was just really fascinating seeing these numbers change. This was who's sitting in whose seat on the Supreme Court. This was about how long each of these groups had been fighting for equal rights and their relative successes. And just comparing them was fascinating. Has anything gotten better since that first Earth Day? This was probably like the 30th anniversary. How much does it cost to make money? So apparently it costs 1.5 cents to make a 1-cent penny. A dime, 6 cents. So a nickel cost 6 cents too, which is crazy. This one I loved because there was all these prominent conservatives who were very anti-gay publicly, but then they were caught up in gay sex scandals. So we decided to compare these guys. All these stories came out like in quick succession. This was one of the perks of working at Newsweek. I got to go photograph Michelle. And yes, in every picture of me you will see in this presentation, my hair is a different color. So we went to the White House to photograph Michelle, and we sent this cover to the printer, and it was all closed and gone. And I went to a party and I got a call telling me there was something seriously wrong with the cover. Everyone was freaking out, and it had to do with the apple. So some people saw Karl Marx in the apple. Some people saw a stormtrooper. And some people saw the Ayatollah.
Wow.
So, and we didn't ever retouch images like that. So, but we did remove one of the reflections, and this is the way the cover appeared. Another client was the Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation. This was the website when they came to us. Just picture Frank Lloyd Wright's body of work, and then you go to the website, and this is what you see. So we completely reinvented it with a light box on top. So every time you went, there was a different image to blow your mind from his work. I mean, it's just so incredible. And then this was the Taliesin West homepage, which I think is what that picture was on the other website. The Frank Lloyd Wright page. We made a timeline of his life. We made a map with all the buildings, whether they were still there or not. And you could click on any of them. For example, this Larkin Administration building is no longer there, but we show pictures of it and tell you about it. A store page, the mobile app, we did everything. I love branding, most of all, probably. And here is a collection of logos we've designed over the years. And with each of these, there was tons of collateral and web and, you know, tons of stuff. The logo is just the first step. What you do with it, how you use it, I think, tells you whether or not it's been successful. It's how it's used. So I'm just going to quickly take you through 2 of these branding projects. There's nothing better than doing a branding project for someone with a boring identity because you know you can do better. So this is what the Brooklyn Public Library, which is the largest public library system in the country, this is what their logo was. And they wanted to bring more young people in, and they wanted to make it more of a community-centered space. So we used the Brooklyn postal abbreviation, BKLYN, and designed this logo and filled it whenever we could with lots of Brooklyn images. And then for all the branches, of which there were, I think, 70, we just took away the word public and replaced it with that branch. So they were all part of the same identity. We did some posters. The tagline for this relaunch was "Start Here." So we made, you know, floor mats to go right outside the library. So before you walk in, it says "Start Here." Gala Invitations. They give an award every year, or a few of them, to local writers. And instead of it being an award that would sit in front of your books on the bookcase, we had this cast so you tucked it in just like a book on your bookcase, which I thought was pretty cool. We couldn't change the signage of the library because it was old Carnegie buildings, and it was essentially in marble, the signs. So we projected the logo onto these old buildings, and it cost like $72 per building. This was the logo for the Museum of Fine Arts, St. Petersburg, when we were hired. It's a great institution with a collection that spans 5,000 years, and they wanted something that matched the elegance of the museum and was flexible enough to use across all types of media, obviously. So this is where we started. This is the main logo. The museum is essentially a vessel for art, so we made our own vessel. We framed it with a perfect line and a hand-drawn line. This is the 3-line version, but given all the materials they produce, we knew this mark wouldn't work in every situation. So we made a 2-line version and a 1-line version. And so there are 3 different logos, but they all feel like the same logo. This is some of the collateral we used. This is a membership card. Shoot, I have to hurry up. This is a magazine, the envelope the magazine comes in. These were floor to ceiling posters in the airport, a very tall, narrow ad. For the menus in the cafe, we chose artwork that the museum owned that involved food. And then everybody insisted that they hang these paintings, which were just in storage because they wanted to see the original paintings. We've done a lot of work with HBO. We mostly work on documentaries, primarily family-friendly material. And this was a series called Saving My Tomorrow. These are just the CD cases. It was a 6-part series about kids on the front line dealing with the climate crisis. This was a guide to what happened on September 11th for people born after September 11th. And the photo was taken by a young girl out the window of an airplane with an Instamatic camera in the 80s. We also designed the National September 11th Memorial and Museum at the World Trade Center, an 11-word mark. And we used this image in that work also because it's so perfect for September 11th. This is a movie that we worked on HBO. It was essentially to teach younger kids about the Holocaust. And there's lots of footage, obviously, but it's too devastating for 10-year-olds to see. So we hired my husband, who's an animator, to animate all the scenes from that time, from the camps and everything, and including this image I used in the poster. And he did such an amazing job that he won an Emmy, which was totally awesome. Which brings me to family. Wasn't that a good segue?
That was a very good segue, yeah.
Thank you. So I know that deciding to have a family is huge, but I want to say, for the record, I worked full time. I had 2 boys. I worked until the day they were born. I went right back to work. It's been hugely important to me, and when the time is right, it should be for you too, and you can work and have a family. I met my husband when I was doing the opening sequence for a TV show, and he was doing the closing sequence, and we met at the mix when the show came together. A very cute meet. I have 2 boys. They're now 15 and 19, but when they were little, I used to constantly make books for them, and I made this one so that they could each learn their namesakes. So one direction was one son, and the other was the other, and I just took them through everybody with their names. And they got to learn their namesakes.
That's great.
I also made business cards that were scaled proportionately from the time they were very little. And every year I would make a new one slightly bigger. I made birthday invitations. That's Buster's arm on the cover of Newsweek. And my son Buster is a big TikTok guy. He has 3 million subs. And this is what they're like today. This is a little video they made. They competed in pulling up that, fruit roll up. And that is the TikTok generation right there. Right. So I started getting into politics. Am I okay for time? I'm going to go really quickly.
Yeah.
In 2004, we were asked to design an identity for a new left-wing radio station called Air America Radio. The original hosts were Al Franken, Rachel Maddow, and Janine Garofalo. This is the logo we designed. We did a launch campaign for them, starting with this poster. But that we used everyone in the cabinet. The photographs are free for anybody. You can always use any public official's photo. And we did an ad buy that's called Grand Central Station Domination, where every ad in the space belongs to Air America. When Obama came along, we had this amazing fundraiser for him in Brooklyn in 2008. Another one in 2012 called Baracklin. I got to meet him because of those fundraisers. 4 years later, I saw this in a magazine and cut it out because it just made me so happy. And in 2016, we had a new fundraiser called Laugh Your Pantsuit Off, which was a fundraiser for Hillary, and it was just stand-up comedy, mostly by women. It was hosted by Amy Poehler and Anna Gasteyer, who had both played Hillary on SNL. This was, I do a lot of these. This was a controversial special election in Alabama. Rex Tillerson had just called Trump a fucking moron, so I thought if the Secretary of State can say that, I can say that about someone else. And Doug Jones did win. This is a group I belong to, which helps with creative for local candidates. And after the election, I was a little angry and was very fortunate to get this job to art direct and design this book, which is a parody memoir by Kurt Anderson and Alec Baldwin of Trump. And we had a great time making it. Making fun of him was a terrific way to deal with my rage. And I did look at Trump's actual books and I took a few cues from them, but they all look like they were designed on Microsoft Word. But there were a few, I wanted it to feel like a better designed Trump book. But we got to do things like just put pictures of Ivanka looking hot behind him on the desk. There are about 10 of them. There were so many fun things. This is the back cover. And you're used to seeing blurbs on the back cover. But for this book, we had blurbs from Trump about Alec and Kurt, which was just incredible. So I'm just going to go through this quickly. The title page. We had a fantastic shoot with Alec. Mark Seliger took the pictures. It was just hysterical. And I did pull quotes in a book, which usually isn't done, but I was thinking if someone just flips through it, I wanted them to know how funny it was. So I just did pull quotes throughout the whole book. I did a chart of world leaders by height, because I thought that might be something he would want. Him playing with his toys, a new logo for the White House, spray tanning, new book covers. Everyone but you is a loser. I love that. This is the last photo in the book, which just sums it all up, really. But after that book was over, I was still angry and looking for what I could do to make a difference. And so I started researching what artists and designers had done in the past when they were faced with a difficult time. And I ended up writing this book. And I'm going to just show you a couple images from a few chapters. But it made me feel a lot better, because there were a lot of times in our country's history where people were really angry and they felt they had to do something, and they did. And those people helped change our country and bring us, you know, to the horrible place we are now. Just kidding. But also I should say the book is like half price on Amazon right now. This is the oldest image in the book. It's from 1754. The American Revolution was a resistance movement too. But just imagine, this is 265 years old. And I bet some of you recognize this image. It's familiar to you. Imagine designing something that people in 265 years would recognize. There's a chapter on suffrage, and the trend in suffrage posters was to show how many states had already given women the right to vote in state elections. So there's hundreds of posters that look like this. And clearly people in the West were way more liberal, every state in the West and no states in the East. There's a big chapter on civil rights. This is a banner that the NAACP hung outside their window every time they got word of a lynching in the South, to let people in the North know what was going on. And it was right on Fifth Avenue. You know, graphically similar in its strength and simplicity, this poster that just says, "I am a man," was carried by all these sanitation workers who were marching on strike in Memphis. And just to see it alone is powerful. To see it, you know, in these numbers is just phenomenal. There's a big Vietnam chapter. This is probably the most famous poster. It was just done by a mom who had a son who was of draft age and didn't want her son to be drafted. And so this was a Mother's Day card that they sent to politicians. And on the inside of this, I didn't even know it was a Mother's Day card. It said, "I don't want candy or flowers. I want an end to killing. We who have given life must be dedicated to preserving it." During the AIDS crisis, the social activism single-handedly created the awareness around this issue that forced the government to act. This was a poster for Black Lives Matter created by Andre Carrillo. This is a poster designed by Mike Matthews for the last presidential election that I thought was just pure genius. And then, you know, memes and posts on social media have taken over, obviously. And Tiny Trump started like this, with someone just doing this, and then they invited people to make their own tiny Trumps. And they did, each at a different scale. This is the tiniest Trump. And then they put out a call to put Trump's head on children's bodies, which was a whole other thing. But this next series really spoke to me. It was how the founding fathers, and I'm a big student of history, are reacting to Trump. So they just took care of all the portraits in the White House. And it's just perfect. But it really, you actually will feel a little optimistic when you're done looking through this book, because you'll see the power of activism and how much we've overcome. Okay, this is the last thing. A few months ago, or sorry, a year ago, my husband was asked to make this music video for a band called Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young. This was a song that was released in 1970, and it's called Teach Your Children Well. And for those who don't know the words by heart, like anyone over 50 does, the first half of the song is Teach Your Children Well, and the second half of the song is Teach Your Parents Well. And we worked on it together because so much of it came from my book. So this video was a perfect combination of design, family, and politics.
That's gorgeous, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Please let Jeff know. That's really remarkable too.
I will.
So you've
Bravo.
always integrated politics into your work. I mean, you could even say like the Saturday Night Live stuff is commentary. It's commentary on popular culture at the time and politics.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you've never. I've always been impressed. You've never been like, oh, I can't do that. It's too scary, or people are going to criticize me, or there's going to be people on their side that don't like me. And the fact that you're not one of those people that's like, oh, I'm really upset, I'll do a vote poster and now I'm done. You take action. I mean, I know on your own, you do fundraisers for Democrats. You work hard to get people elected.
Absolutely.
You really put energy into this that results in real actions, not just a lot of like self-promotion through vote posters.
Yeah, because it's horrible times. And I learned from doing my book, if you don't do something, I mean, I have to. I feel so powerless. I'm struggling so much with what's going on. The only thing that keeps me going is actually trying to make change. I got nothing else. I don't have.
And how do you deal then with I mean, obviously there's people that disagree with you and are probably like, why are you doing this? It's not a designer's role to do this. And
yeah, I would just completely disagree. It's specifically a designer's role to communicate with the public. So, and why I'm not ashamed of how I feel. I mean, especially now, I feel like most of the country is on the same page right about now. Majority.
Please.
Majority. So, you know, people come around, but it takes this kind of work. It takes being there every day and showing up and trying to make a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because you could have probably made a lot more money doing work for big oil companies. And
you're right. I could have.
Well,
I gotta go.
Yeah. Well, I think that's always the question. And I talk about this, that how do you design an ethical studio? You know, what are the parameters around it? You know, and I think as someone who's a student now, or someone who's starting out, it's okay to be committed. It's okay for you to have ethics. It's okay for you to care. Absolutely. But I think those are decisions you have to make, and you have to be ethical yourself on how you treat other people around you.
Right. I don't know if I would have done it in my 20s, but again, the times were totally different. There wasn't that much going on. Now, we
had Clinton, like you said.
Exactly. But today, I don't know how anybody can not do something. I mean, if it's making phone calls, signing petitions, whatever, just contribute, be a part of the conversation, because it obviously affects all of us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think in education, I know, Sean, in your program, you're really pushing a lot of the instructors to address these issues. You know?
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky that we have a great faculty and they are just as invested. And it's a learning experience for everyone about sort of rejecting the old ways of doing some of the things we've done and embracing new ways. And every little bit helps. I mean, it's not, there's not one solution. There's a million little solutions.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and whether you decide to write a book, you know, create your own, you know, web page, your protest page, you know, whatever you feel like doing, and your own, you know, I know a lot of the students at ArtCenter were creating their own pages that were dealing with the effect of COVID, you know, opinions, how it affected them. And I think that's really, you know, one of the best outlets is to do. So it's some of the questions, I think you've been giving this advice, you know, some advice to young designers now, to future careers and responsibilities. Well, I think you've said it. Responsibility is, you do have a responsibility, right?
You do. You're part of society, but also it makes you feel good. I mean, how can it not, to try and make it better? I mean, I don't know if I'll succeed at anything I take on, but I try.
What I thought was interesting, Bonnie, it was on Good Morning America, and Microsoft came out with, I don't know if you saw this, I think it was Good Morning America, what are the 10 top careers that they would recommend for the future that's going to be vitally important for the future. Number 10 was graphic design.
Wow, amazing.
So all the graphic designers, I was like, oh. So if a
we're
company,
a real career. Yeah.
Yeah, we're a real career. And if and I hope the government was watching that. So if, you know, acknowledgement by, you know, one of the world's largest corporations that talks about future careers, what's important for the future, that, you know, graphic design was an important career, they felt. And it's true. It's the messaging that we're able to do. The messaging.
Well, also, every single company, I mean, if you owned a local insurance company, let's say, you never needed to have any graphic design. But now you need to have a website and an identity. I mean, every single company has to have a visual corresponding identity. Nobody is immune. So that does open a lot of possibilities for designers.
This is an interesting question that Jack asked. That thank you for your amazing work, of course. You know, that's like, it's just incredible just to see. What would be a good way for a young designer to voice their hesitance or discomfort with the ethics or morals of a client?
I mean, I feel like usually an open conversation is the best way. That's not enough information for me to really propose a solution. Does it affect you in any way, or is it something that they're doing that has nothing to do with you, for example? Those are two very different things. But if it does affect you, I think it's totally reasonable to bring it to their attention, not in anger, but in an open and fair discussion. Just ask them to explain to you why they do it the way they do it. If it doesn't affect you at all, I would say finish the job and walk away if it's a company with bad ethics. You don't have to be involved with them. But if it does, you owe it to yourself. I mean, to just talk to them and find out why. By engaging with them, you might learn something you didn't know, and there might be a real reason for doing it that way. And you're just assuming, you know, it's wholly negative. Or you could enlighten them and they could change their ways because you've brought it to their attention. So it's definitely worth talking about.
And deciding who you'll work for. I mean, there's some companies that have approached me in my career, like fast food companies, and I said, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to help put fast food into high school or elementary school cafeterias. I just can't be part of that. And that's fine. I mean, you walk away from money, but you got to live with yourself.
Right.
Totally. There are so many things more important than money. You know, when we were in our 30s, and I smoked a lot. I smoked cigarettes constantly, and a cigarette company, not crack.
Okay, good.
Cigarette company asked us to sign a package, and we said no. I knew how horrible it was. Like, even though I was a customer, I couldn't cross that line.
That's interesting. And there's so many people who want to thank you. Claire says thank you. But
I also think it's important to recognize that line is your line. Like, I can't dictate to someone, no, you cannot work for McDonald's. That is a total personal choice.
And as young designers, I know a lot of people are wondering, they're saying, yes, but I'm young, I need the money, I need to, you know, do I have the option of turning something down? And I think you have to remember that what you're doing is a long career choice.
Absolutely. I wouldn't have turned down anything for anything when I was 22. I mean, it's just you don't even, I didn't know what I was doing or how I felt about anything. I mean, you have so much time. I would give it 10 years and then try and put your feelings into words, try and figure out what your goals are, what your ethics are, what your values are, and you can go from there. But for now, just try to learn as much as humanly possible, explore as many different things as possible so that you can figure out what you feel most passionate about. And oftentimes you can't until you try it.
I think people should also recognize that your resistance book, that was self-generated. You came up with the idea, you approached publishers, you wrote it, you collected the content. It wasn't like someone came to you and said, hey, you want to do a really amazing book on this? That you cared about something deeply enough to take that action, to bring that information forward.
Yeah,
that's a lot of work.
But also it was actually Adobe Max, because I did it as a talk, thinking like, oh, this is my talk this year, and it was really fun for me to pull this stuff together. But then the audience was just like, after, like, where do I can you send me your presentation? I want more and more and more. And so I was like, oh, maybe this is a book.
It's true.
But just by trying it, I mean, you have to try it to learn.
Yeah. But you've always, I mean, the other thing that people should know too is that Bonnie and I work on Command X together, which is a way to get young people on the main stage.
Absolutely.
Which has turned out to be, like, I'm biased, but I think it's like the big hit of every conference.
I agree.
And again, but we get hammered on that. I mean, the assignments that you come up with sometimes are so controversial And but it's great. You know, the audience is responding. You know, some are furious and some are enthused. And I'm always so amazed at how brave you are that you don't just come up with the, okay, design a popsicle stick.
You know, dialogue is the most important thing. And I remember like 10 years ago, probably people were saying, we're not going to, until our country has a dialogue about racism, nothing will change. And I was thinking, what does that even mean? Our country has a dialogue. Our country is having a dialogue, and it's phenomenal. And so those projects force people to talk about different things at the conference. And what is a conference for, if not to engage them and challenge them, not just the kids, but the audience too.
Yeah, and I think maybe we might want to end with, you've done an amazing job of balance. Someone asked, Jack McEntee asked, you know, how do you balance it? And first of all, I have to say to Jack, she's a woman, she can do it. Sorry, Sean, or sorry.
Hey, we can think about one thing at a time, and that's it. That's a.
I think it's naturally women are asked to multitask. You know, how do you do it? How do you be pregnant, have a career, have a husband, have an opinion? And, you know, I think it just shows how amazing you are. And, you know, I think it's just done.
Right.
That's the answer, Jack. It's just done.
It actually, the more you have to do, the more you can do. I always felt after I have kids like, oh, I can't spend the night here solving this problem. I have to do it in 2 hours. And that changes the way you approach your work.
Right.
So you have to be better, faster, stronger. You don't have a choice.
Right.
But when I was 25, I slept in my office.
Before the children. So and I think that's very true. It's a good, you know, I had the advice of don't delay, because eventually when you start adding to your career and to your life, it will get more complicated. And the more comfortable you are with your talents and your creativity, the more you can keep adding to your life.
Right.
And you don't even think twice about it.
Nope.
Just the way it is. So we should end on this note. I think, Sean, you have to go to class. Do you, or not today?
That's one of the upsides of the fun part of the week, to actually go and teach, which is, you know, right. actually more, it's more to like go and hear amazing ideas and see amazing things that I think try to figure out how I can steal. But
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Right. So thank you, Bonnie.
Sure. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Sean, Bonnie.
Thanks, Bonnie. Thanks, Gloria.
Bye-bye.
Bye.